Welcome to the Femininja Project. I am your host, Cheryl I Love, middle-aged ninja hiding in plain sight, dedicated to restoring human dignity one person at a time and helping you unleash your personal power. Discover that it's possible to look like a woman, act like a lady, move like a ninja, and think like a warrior. And remember, men are always welcome on the Femininja Project. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Femininja Project. And thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. And I have a fantastic guest with me today. We're going to talk a lot about a lot of different things, but we're also going to talk about martial arts and women in martial arts. So my guest today is Sara Deacon. She is an enthusiastic life coach, faithful believer, energetic martial arts instructor, lifelong artist, and mom of 3 sons. She is passionate about lifelong learning, personal development, and martial arts. Sara is also the host of the popular podcast, Martial Arts and Crafts. Sara, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Thanks, Cheryl. It's always a joy to talk to you.
Likewise, I love talking to you and especially love connecting with women in martial arts and especially women who've taken it to the level of black belt and instructor. So congratulations on that.
Yeah, I never thought that this is where I would be in my 40s.
Yeah, it kind of is one of those things that drops in your lap. So tell us how you did get involved in martial arts and then tell us how it has changed your life or how it influences some of the things that you've done in your life or doing now.
Okay, so I'm just going to talk for the rest of your show because that is like a huge question and a lot of answers to come. Yeah, I got into martial arts because of my oldest son. When he was about 6 years old, he had done like little kid team sports like soccer and things like that. And he put a lot of pressure on himself. And carried sort of the weight of the team. Like he was very concerned about messing up because he didn't want to let his teammates down and things like that. So team sports wasn't really a great fit for him at that time. And so we had talked about, looking around, maybe getting him into something a little bit more individually focused. And martial arts crossed our path. We were at a kids' night at the zoo in our area at the Milwaukee County Zoo. And there was this karate school there doing a demo and my kids jumped in and just loved it, like had such a blast. So I signed them up then and there. And the oldest went all in, ran with it. He did phenomenal. And as we started connecting with the martial arts school, and I would watch classes and, drag all my 3 kids. My youngest was a baby in a little baby carrier at the time. He was not even walking. I drag all the kids to classes and I would watch the instructors with these kids and just the way they talked to them, the way they taught them, the things they were teaching these 6, 7, 8-year-old kids were things that I could start to see a lot of gaps in even a lot of the adults that I knew, like even for myself, as I'm sitting there watching these classes, I'm like, I'm getting my mind blown. And these mat chats are directed to, 7-year-olds. And so I started really translating and taking those lessons off the mat, even though I wasn't even training. I started taking those lessons off the mat into things like, leading Bible study groups or working with kids classes at my church or, doing the things that I was doing, my relationships with my friends, my relationships with my family, helping the kids then translate those mat chat lessons to their encounters at school and their academics and, their relationships with friends, family, all the things. And I had a friend who got sick of me saying things like, oh, that's like just what they said in karate, where we're talking about this value or that, that life skill or whatever it is. And so it just started to seep into all different areas of my life. And this was, again, I'm just watching at this point. I'm just watching my kids' classes. I'm working with them to try and, encourage them to grow. And the way our school works, there is a bonus the more family members you get involved with the school. So by the time my third son joined, I was able to join for free membership. And that was my time. So that was when he was, 3, I think. So, and he's 7 now. So that was maybe a little over 3 years ago, maybe about 4 years ago. And so I took a class in the summer of whenever that was, 2019, maybe 2018, 2019, something like that. I stepped on the mat for the first time, and I haven't looked back. I attend every class I can. I've learned a lot about my body. I've learned a lot about mental discipline, physical discipline, just all the things. And again, because I came to it through my kids, I think the tipping point for me just inside myself was asking myself that question as they were kind of resisting my guidance and leadership at home to encourage them to practice or whatever it was, that I wondered if I'm asking them to do something that I'm not willing to do myself. Like I asked myself that question. Am I asking them to do something that I'm not willing to do for myself? And that was like kind of a tough moment because I had realized that I was asking them to do things that I was not being an example, showing them how.
Truth serum's tough, huh?
The kid, I know you don't have kids of your own, but kids do this thing where they really reflect very clearly what you're putting out into the world. So when I hear my own words from their little voices, it is very convicting.
Yeah, you can't argue, can you?
Right.
So I just have a few questions for you. So how old were you when you stepped on the mat for the first time?
I was 39 years old.
Okay. Good to know.
I made the commitment to get my black belt, and it's a rank, a uniform rank in our school where once you commit to doing whatever it takes to get to black belt, you then earn the blue uniform, which signifies that commitment. Is kind of they do a whole little like speech and stuff and award the blue uniform. And I earned that on my 40th birthday.
Wow. What a way to celebrate your 40th birthday.
Yes, it was during a family class. It was the only class that my husband has taken so far. Was the family class with me on my 40th birthday.
So I want to talk about the mat chats. And to me, that is something that's, just phenomenal. And I think maybe some of the listeners might even be surprised at some of the things that you were talking about with these life skills and the life lessons and everything that you learn on the mat. Because even when people hear that, I study martial arts or, the spirit of the warrior, they think of fighting, aggression, and all that type of thing. And it's so much more than that.
Right. It really is. Our school, they operate on purpose and values, and they really drive in the values as behaviors. And when people think of martial arts, they think of things like discipline and respect, things like that as the values. Our values go deeper than that. We hold ourselves and each other accountable for our actions and attitude. So that's one of our operating values at the school. So during, the month of, I don't know which month that one comes up. I think it's January. For the month of January, they're drilling this life scare, this value with the students, talking about, being okay with no, or, putting your shoes away the right spot at the dojo or at the, at home or at school, being responsible for your own things. So those are the kinds of things they talk about on the mat, because most families who enroll their kids in martial arts, they're not looking to make their kids fighters. They're not looking to grow MMA fighters. Like maybe there's a handful of those folks out there. Great. But most parents who want to get their kids into martial arts are looking for that discipline, that respect, that self accountability, and those kinds of things. And so that's what those mat chats are for. And, we drill things like awareness, even in the physical drills, as the kids are running around back and forth or going in lines, it's, awareness. I'm awake to the world around me. So like just making sure they're aware of their bodies, how to hold their bodies still, how to focus their eyes and show somebody they're listening with their behavior. So it really does drill in those values as behaviors.
And in other words, it's just, I'm thinking of as confidence, which is so important for kids to learn. Right. I mean, it's important for adults too.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's another one of my favorite, the life skills that they drill is courage. My fear does not control me.
I love that.
We're talking about how it's okay to have fear. You're going to feel afraid sometimes. You're going to be nervous when you're performing at a tournament or, performing in front of your school or talking on the, giving a speech or whatever it is. You're going to be nervous, and it's okay to be nervous. It's not okay to run and hide and give up and quit. You got to push through that fear to get to that, to use that courage to get to that confidence on the other side.
And these are lessons that are going to stay with them for the rest of their lives.
100%.
Yeah. I have a friend who has 2 children. Of course, they're all grown. They're both grown and doing their own thing now. And one is an attorney, and she's a woman, and she's very petite and very small. And they did taekwondo, and both of them, very dedicated, went all the way up to black belt. And then, of course, college came and they stopped doing it. But she told her mom, she says, even to this day, what I learned in the dojo really is helping me when she's standing in court and she has to go in front of a judge. She's presenting a case. She says, all of that just comes back to me. And she says, I don't know if I could have done it without that training.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that sort of leads into the other half of my story is I am also a small business owner. I work for myself. I started my own business in 2017. And if it hadn't been for the lessons and influence of my kids in karate, I don't know that I ever would have had the courage to go into business for myself. I always said, I don't want to work for myself. My mom had her own business. I'm like, I don't want to do that. Just let me go to work and just let somebody else tell me what to do. Then I don't have to bring it home. I don't have to worry about it. And then I could just do my own thing. And that is not what life brought me. Again, it was one of those convicting moments where it's like, I'm learning these lessons. And then it came time to apply it, to really say like, my husband would ask me like, well, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? Like for work? Cause you need to work or you need to do something. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. And then my baby was, my little one was very little at the time. Like I said, when the kids started karate, and I had seen from having 3 kids and my own experiences with babies, I had seen this gap in care. You go from being pregnant and seeing, all the people all the time and everybody being very interested in you and how you're doing, to nobody cares until your kids are in preschool. And that's a little bit extreme, but it's really hard those first 2-3 years of parenthood to connect with other people, to know who you even are, because you're at the beck and call of this tiny creature you're supposed to keep alive, but you really don't know if you're doing it right, because there's 100 different right ways to do it. And everybody's going to tell you their right way to do it, which may or may not align with what you actually feel is right for you and your baby. Because again, we are all different. So that was something that, again, through my experience, I saw just a need for extra support, extra love and care for the postpartum parents. So I went into business for myself. I took training and got certified and practiced as a postpartum doula for about 3 years at that time. And again, I don't know that I would have had the courage to do that and do it the way I did without having those lessons from watching my kids at karate, like hanging out in my head.
So I just want to reiterate, because I find this fascinating that you actually got that courage to be able to start your own business without even ever stepping on the mat.
I know.
mean, you were just sitting there
Mm-hmm.
and listening and watching. And I mean, it's fascinating because I talk a lot about neuroplasticity, where the brain is just taking in all of this information. You don't even have to be awake. You could have been sleeping through their classes and your brain would still be listening and taking all that information in.
Right.
And there you go, then opening your own business, which is a very frightening thing to do.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. But in the process, it was really interesting, because through the workshops and things that I took, we worked with what are the values of my business and how am I going to show up? And it was hey, that's just like in karate, where we take these values and act them out in our life. And we have that integrity to show up in that way. So that, again, yeah, it is really interesting. I have to confess, I don't watch my kids' classes quite as closely, because I'm getting a lot of the lessons for myself and out on the floor teaching them myself. So,
So let's talk about that, because being on the other side of, the mat, and from my own personal experience, I know about being in line as a student, and then all of a sudden I'm teaching and I'm on the other side facing this line of students going, oh my God, what am I going to do now? So it's very different to be on the instructor side. But really even as an instructor, you're still learning as a student as well.
Absolutely. Because we have a really phenomenal instructor training program in our school. And it's, it's not super time intensive, but it's very focused. And the leadership training, it actually starts when the kids are, 6, 7, 8 years old. They're even in the little ninjas, even the 3 and 5-year-olds can direct other, their classmates to different lines and start stepping up and taking action as leaders, even at these very, very young ages. It's adorable. Sometimes it looks a little chaotic, but again, they're teaching these leadership skills from the ground up. So the legacy program, the instructor training program that I'm in, I was invited to participate, and it sort of speaks to just kind of how I really enjoy how I enjoy working with my clients, and how it's worked for me is the whole personal growth and development. It's step by step. It's small baby step by baby step. It's okay. Watch my kids on the mat. Okay. Baby step out onto the mat. Okay. Learn how to do a round kick. Okay. Like show up to the next class, learn this punch, learn this kick, learn this form. And it's just showing up and taking that next step. So I was invited to the instructor training program, and I said, okay, I'm going to do what it takes to make that work, to make that happen, because I knew that the lessons they were teaching were not just valuable for the kids, but valuable for me. And I could take that into my business, even in my postpartum work. I could take some of these communication skills, these leadership skills out into the world that I lived in, the grown-up adult world, it's real life applicable. So I knew even if I decided not to actually do any instructing ever, it was going to be okay. And they were explicit with that. They said, you're not required to instruct by participating in this class. It's another offer to learn. It's an invitation to come and grow. And that is how I took it and ran with it. I mean, baby step by baby step.
A couple of things. I just love the little ninjas, because we have a little ninja program too. And it just, even when I hear the word little ninjas, it just cracks me up. And
they're the best. I love them.
Well, and the funniest thing is, if you've never seen a kid's class, and especially when the really little ones, it is just hilarious. I mean, they take themselves so seriously sometimes. And even while they're having fun, it's just so much fun to watch them and learning new things. And, even for myself, when I first started, my biggest thing was learning how to roll, because we roll a lot on the floor.
Oh, yeah.
And learning how to tie my own belt took me probably a year to do that. That in itself was just an art form.
I think it took one of my kids until black belt to really learn. But maybe high brown.
Oh, that's pretty funny.
But and again, like my youngest is 7, but he is in the intermediate belt classes because he started so young.
Wow.
So he's already sparring and things like that. And there are kids, like I said, it's amazing to look from my oldest to my youngest, because my oldest started at right around 7.
Mm-hmm.
My youngest started when he was 3. So
wow.
he was ready to level up. Because again, as the youngest brother, he wants to keep up with his big
sure.
brothers.
Yeah.
And so he has taken, like, he was playing with my oldest nunchucks when he was like 2 years old. And I was like, any other kid, I might take away the nunchucks, but with him, he was actually doing the moves. It was slow and it was toddlerish, but he was doing what he had seen his brother practice.
Right.
So he's ready. You talk about taking yourself seriously. He's ready. He's just fighting so hard to get up to black belt. He's still got maybe another 1.5 to 2 years left, but yeah, it's just really, really fascinating to see these little ones and what they actually are capable of when you give them the permission to try and the direction and the reinforcement of the positive.
And it's almost like they don't understand failure when they're at that age. As an adult, it's like, oh my gosh, what if I fail? What if I, look silly or stupid or, get hurt? They're like little sponges. They're just looking everything up, and just through observation and imitation, they learn so fast. Whereas adults, we just have this kind of mental block sometimes.
Yeah. And that reminds me of making the shift to instructing. It's, coming up through and, taking the classes and learning all the moves and everything like that. It's very self-focused. I need to control myself in this certain way. I need to show up in this certain way. I need to make a certain type of presentation. It's very focused on me. And the evolution to instructing was when I realized that it's not about me. Like, it is to a point, but what I'm really there for is to make sure that the students get what they need. And then my performance doesn't really matter as much. It takes a lot of the pressure off, because again, I know the scripts, I know the structure, I know how the things are supposed to go. And if I fumble over my words, or if I don't say it perfectly the first time, like, nobody's like rating me. Yeah. Nobody's rating my performance. They're rating the performance of their student, of their child out on the floor. They're rating, these lessons being translating from the mat to at home and at school. Like, that's what matters. And if I don't have the script, 100% memorized, or the way to teach, right, exactly. If I say begin instead of go, like, is anybody going to really fall off the,
the world is not going to stop turning.
It's going to be okay. So it's just, it was a matter of getting out of my own head enough to get out of my own way.
There's something else about teaching, though, and we talk about that a lot, at our school, is that you really, when you're teaching, it is such an incredible opportunity to learn, because as you're teaching somebody, I mean, you're seeing things that you might not experience or you might not notice when you're on the opposite side. Just, I'm a student, so you need to teach me. But when it takes the training to a whole new level, and the understanding of movement, and the understanding of course, the commitment and the discipline and everything, plus the ability, we have something that we call evade, deflect, and redirect. So that's basically, life is full of hits. If somebody's getting ready to punch you, you evade, you get out of the way. You can't get hurt if you're not there. And then the rest of it is evade, deflect, and redirect, which is something that you applied to your own business when COVID hit, because you had to evade, deflect, and redirect. What happened?
Well, I love your segues here because exactly what you were just talking about, it just made me think of this evolution that I've had in my business towards
Mm-hmm.
coaching. Now that I coach people on their lives, essentially, we work a lot
Mm-hmm.
with balance. Um, Now that I work with people in this mental emotional capacity, it's very similar to that. I receive, the guidance and instruction and mentoring and coaching that I received, I am now shifting and making myself more aware of what is the need, what are people actually struggling with, and how can I, mentally do that, emotionally and in a supportive way, and hold that space for people in that way. So just what you were saying made me think of the coaching, the
Mm-hmm.
student to instructor and the, coachee to coach,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of evolution. And yeah, when COVID hit, that was when it became really apparent to me that, you know, I needed to, I don't know, future proof my business. I needed to adjust. I did take pretty much 2020 off of work because I had some clients who finished out in spring, some that I had started with before the world shut down. Some of them finished out with me. I had one cancellation and one ended service. And it was, it was okay timing for that because it felt at least close to complete. I was kind of sitting with this, like, maybe we should talk about tapering off or stopping anyway. So that was where I was at. I was at in early 2021, or early 2020. I was really getting some great momentum. My business, they say like it takes like 3 years to really build a business. And that was right around the 3-year mark. I was getting some really good momentum. I had steady clients. I had steady inquiries. I was feeling really excited about 2020 for the postpartum work. And then as we all know, it became a little bit scary for folks to want to invite a stranger into their house to breathe on their newborn. So, and then, I mean, that's essentially was my job. I would hold babies and I would be in somebody's personal space. So well before 2020, I had actually started toying with offering virtual services. I never had anybody actually take me up on it, but I like to say I was offering virtual before it was cool. So, I had this whole, program and things all in the works in development. And what I realized in 2020 was it was coaching. That was life coaching, was this, being a resource, being a soundboard, being able to hold space in an impartial, non-judgmental way. When you talk about early parenthood, how many people are coming at you with their right way? Like I said before, it's, the mother-in-law is saying, well, that's not how I did it.
Right.
And it's nothing against how the mother-in-law did it. It's just, that's not the way that the new mother is going to do it. Even if she does exactly the same things, it's not going to be in the same way.
Right.
Because we all have to find our own way. And that was my navigating 2020, was finding my own way and realizing that I had been coaching for years already. And that the work that I've been doing is what is very, very much needed in this very uncertain environment full of fear, where, again, that courage, my fear does not control me life skill came up over and over and over again. And I said, how can I help other people get the courage they need to do what they need to do? And so in early 2021, I opened my business as a coach. I don't know what, redirected. Was that the word you used? Deflected, yeah. Redirected.
Well, yeah,
I deflected in
deflected.
postpartum. I deflected 2020, and then in 2021, I redirected to focus on what I could do with what I had. I had resources. I have Zoom. I have a phone. I have a website. I have some followers. I have some experience running my own business for myself. So what can I do? Like, the service itself didn't, it doesn't change much because I'm still talking to people. I'm still, learning from them. I'm still helping them grow. I'm helping them evolve. So it's just, maybe it's different people. I've worked with some business owners. I've worked with corporate professionals, and now I'm redirecting again and seeing a big need in young adults and teens for some extra support. I had a potential client call it emotional hand holding.
True.
So just just that bridge to help get people over the gap. And, young adults are going through so much upheaval and transition. And now that we are likely coming out of this world changing year, 2 years, we're different than we were. So we're all figuring it out. Right. And on top of that, teens, young adults, they're figuring out who they want to be, what they want their life to look like. And it's not a straight path. And as an adult, I know that it's not a straight path. Like I said, I never thought I would be a karate instructor in my 40s. We'll just leave it at that, in my 40s. So yeah, I never thought, because a lot of people that come to instructing, they've been martial artists their whole lives. They are the ones that started at 3 or 4 years old, and then they come back to it as adults to instruct and to pass that on. But I came to it in a different way, and it's been really great and really eye-opening. And I think it's really valuable for young people to see that adults don't have all the answers, and it's okay not to. Because it's these 18-year-olds, they think they need to have it all figured out. They need to have the answers. And I mean, how many of us adults also think that too? We need to know the answer before we move or before we take action.
Yeah. Right.
And sometimes clarity comes from the action itself, and that's okay.
So I want to go back to, of course.
I know I said a lot.
No, you said just enough.
I love it.
Just going back to the, in your 40s, didn't think you'd ever be an instructor, a karate instructor in your 40s. I mean, it's really not something that most women, think, oh, hey, yeah, I'm going to do this. I'll get married at this age. I'll start my family at this age. Oh, I think maybe I'll start karate at this age and then become an instructor when I'm in my 40s. So are people surprised when they hear that you're a karate instructor? People who don't know you, when they meet you for the first time, what is their reaction? Because I know what the reaction is when they find out what I do.
It's usually a little bit over the top. It's something memorable about me. It's something that I do a lot of networking for my business now. And it's something that, some facilitators and people bring up a lot, is like, and watch out for Sara, because she can, she could take you down. And and that's fine. It's amusing to me because, again, being immersed in that world of martial arts, I don't think it's that big a deal because I'm surrounded by black belts all the time. So it's like, it's humbling to me and just sort of eye-opening and just something that's interesting to be aware of, because as I encounter other new people and they learn about it and they're like, wow, that's awesome. And I'm like, oh yeah, I guess it is, like it's sort of like that novelty sort of wears off because you've been doing it for so many years. And again, we've been part of that community for seven, almost 8 years now. And it's just like, it's been part of our lives for so long as a family and as a community, because I have some really, really wonderful friends that I've made through training together that, again, like I go out for dinner and every single person at the table is a black belt. So like, it doesn't seem that exceptional to me anymore. But again, like, getting out into those other circles and groups, people will tell me, oh yeah, my kids train, or yeah, I used to train when I was a kid, or, and I have met some other martial artists that maybe aren't as, open about it as I am. I'm just like, well, it's part of who I am now. Right. So I'm going to wear that as part of my identity. But yeah, I have been able to connect with some other martial artists. I actually have a meeting later today with somebody else who's who trains in a different discipline, who I met through
Awesome.
networking and through somebody else saying, hey, you should talk to them because they're also a
Another
martial
woman?
artist. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yes,
That's
actually.
wonderful. Yep. Did she start as an adult or as a?
I don't know. I'm going to find out later.
Well,
We
let
haven't
us
really
know.
had a chance to chat yet. So
Because I would love to talk to her. I love talking to other women in martial arts, and it's really
yes.
interesting to get their perspective when they started, how old they were or why they started. And, my first experience with a woman in martial arts was we ended up getting to be very close friends, but it didn't start out well. We were white belts together, and this woman was, well, she's half my age. She's 30 years younger than me. I am her mother's age. And so, we were white belts together, and she started in some sort of martial arts ever since she was 7 years old. And all she ever wanted was to be a martial artist and own her own dojo someday. And all I ever wanted was to be a princess and own my own ballet studio someday. So already, right, we were really in alignment, but she was so serious about everything she was doing. And of course, I'm just tossing my ponytail going, this is really stupid. But anyhow, that was the only experience I ever had with another woman doing martial arts, because, we would have some women that would come in, take a few classes, and then which was my plan. But it didn't turn out that way.
Right. Yeah. I've heard stories like that a lot. And actually it's something I'm really grateful for in our academy is that we do have, a decent amount of women. A lot of the karate moms end up coming out and trying. So there's a really good mix of male, female in our classes. We don't have a ton of female instructors. We have a few, but one of the owners of a related school that we do some training with, one of the owners is a woman as well. So again, it's one of those perspective things, right? Where it's kind of normal where I'm training, but I know because of, the history of martial arts, it is very much a masculine, perceived masculine discipline. And a lot of the men in martial arts, still have some of that, that carryover of like the male dominated authority kind of, hierarchies, kind of whatever you want to call it, the more masculine ways of instructing, training, and on all of that.
Well, it's really interesting because in our school, and, like I said, women are a novelty. We're getting more women now at this point, but they love women. They just love women and they want to train women. But in our art, it takes a very long time to become a black belt. And, they would either be intimidated or just wanted to learn a few things, get some self-defense, but didn't have the staying power. But, there's, like I said, there's a lot more women now who are getting involved. So it's really kind of fun.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So now let's just segue into, because we're talking martial arts, let's talk arts. Because you are an artist.
Great. I am.
So you've got quite a background, and quite a diverse interest. No wonder why you're such a big fan of lifelong learning.
Yes. I've always cast my net wide instead of deep.
But look at what you've caught along the way.
Right. Yeah. I used to think it was a bad thing that I didn't stay focused on just sort of one thing my whole life and become sort of that expert or master or whatever. But as I've grown and evolved and my perception has changed, it's that paradigm shift of like, hey, there's value in who I am, because I don't like what I do. I bring to everything that I do. So even though I'm not doing one thing, for all of it, like when I was little, I wanted to be an artist when I grew up, and I was an artist when I was little, and I was an artist when I grew up. I lost track of making art for a while, but, when I had little kids, it's a lot harder to find the time or the space to do it. I continued to write at least. So it's like, there was the little thread that carried through. But again, I had wide interests, like talking about high schoolers. I had a lot of different interests when I got to be junior and senior in high school. I was in acting, I was in choir, and I was doing all sorts of different things. I wanted to maybe do writing, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I did all the things. So I didn't go to art school, even though that's what a lot of other students in my art classes were pursuing. They were pursuing art school. They were building their portfolios, but I didn't feel that was the thing for me. Although I knew it would always be a thing for me, because creativity is one of my core values. It's something that I hold really, really high value in. So yeah, keeping creative is sometimes some seasons of life, it just was, I'm coloring in a coloring book, and that is how I am getting that outlet. But now I have grown into, I don't know if you would call it professional, but I have sold some arts and crafts.
Wow.
I like making crafts. I like to paint and draw. So yeah, it actually, so you mentioned my podcast name is Martial Arts and Crafts, and that actually started as a joke. Because again, being involved in karate, I realized we came to learn that the dojo, as they order the uniforms for the students, every single uniform comes with a white belt. So what they do with all these white belts is they throw them away, the ones they don't need, because there's not as many white belts as there are students who need uniforms.
Right.
So they would just get rid of the extra ones. And I said, I like working with a lot of unique materials. And I said, can I have them? And they said, sure, they're just going in the garbage. And I was like, I would love them for that amount of like fabric and, effort to not end up just in a landfill somewhere.
Oh yeah.
Because again, one of my other values is sustainability. I try to minimize waste and recycle and buy secondhand and everything like that. So I took home a bag full of white belts, and then a couple weeks later, they had cleared out their storage space, and I ended up with belts of all different colors.
Ooh,
it
nice.
was fantastic. And what I ended up doing with the belts is weaving them into little baskets, little decorative baskets. So we have a couple of them in my house holding various things. And I've sold a couple of them through our holiday sale right at our dojo, because we do a holiday sale, and it's usually like we sell equipment and merch, like, mugs and t-shirts and stuff. But we also, I partnered with them to offer some artwork, some photography, and things like that. So it did sort of start out as like this joke. As we're walking out, when I said, hey, can I have the white belts? I was like, oh, it's like martial arts and crafts. Yay. And my friend who trains with me was just like, that's awesome. You should make it a thing.
Oh, that's so funny.
And then I did.
So were you thinking about doing a podcast already before you heard the name? So, okay. So the
quick answer, no.
So the podcast developed from the name.
The podcast, yeah, it was just, I didn't know when I thought about doing a podcast, I didn't really have a, deep focus, a niche or whatever. So I just took what I was already playing with, which was martial arts and crafts, and just called that the podcast, but basically said, well, I'm going to give myself permission to just talk about whatever I want to talk about. And because a lot of what I talk about is art, creativity, growth, personal development, and martial arts, and how that translates and how that applies, how those lessons apply off the mat. Well, martial arts and crafts seemed appropriate.
So I thought my story about getting into podcasting was odd. I think you beat me at that.
Well, it was, getting into podcasting was just sort of it was a 2020 thing. It was one of those redirects.
Yeah. Evade, deflect, and redirect.
It was another result of the work that I was doing, the processing internally that I was doing. I wanted another way to do it. And I thought, well, a lot of people have podcasts, and some of them are highly polished and professional, but I started listening to podcasts that weren't, and they were still good, and they were still entertaining to listen to. So I said, well, I have some stuff to say, and maybe working on articulating my thoughts in different ways would help me grow, help me, clarify my own message, help me clarify my own mind, unpack all the things that were going on through the last few years, not even just 2020, but just over the last several years of my life. And so, I started in October 2020. It was right around the anniversary of when I earned my first belt. So it was like a year after I had, it was like the 3 years after I had earned my gold belt or whatever it was. So I was like, okay, we're going to do it on this date. And October is such a busy month for us, but I did it anyway. And I gave myself permission to play because I knew I wasn't going to be a polished professional podcaster, but I knew I had some stuff to say. And I knew that I had started convincing myself and actually believing that the way I have to say maybe some of the same things anybody else has said is going to be the right way for somebody else to hear.
Exactly. And I love the fact that you said you gave yourself permission to play. And that's a word that we use a lot, even in our dojo, is, okay, this is the technique. Now go ahead and play. But, when you have that spirit of playfulness and exploration, your creativity does flow, which is something that you probably already intuitively knew as you were saying that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been a great journey. I've been doing it over a year now, which I never thought that it would really go anywhere. But now it's that showing up consistently, doing the next thing, taking that baby step, and that it adds up. So, I wouldn't advise going back and listening to my first couple episodes, but it does show that there is evolution that happens.
That is hilarious, because I always tell people I cannot go back and listen to my first couple of episodes when I was just talking and rambling, because
I'm not going to take them down, but I'm not going to recommend them either.
Although I've had people say, "Oh, they were really good," and I'm like, "Oh God, it makes my ears bleed even thinking about them." So, you learn as you go, right?
Right. Yep. That's what that clarity coming from action. It's not, you don't have to have all the answers figured out, but maybe something like a small step you can take.
There's also something else when you're talking about your multiple interests and how, you flit it about with all these different things. There is a word for people like that. It actually is kind of like a personality type, because that's basically what I am. And somebody on one of my earlier episodes was talking about it. So I'll have to dig back in the archives. When I find the word, I'll let you know.
Oh yeah, please do. Because
it's not a bad thing.
I read it. It was from a book I read that, again, helped me feel more confident in that quality that I have. Instead of trying to change it, it gave me permission. And it was Real Artists Don't Starve by Jeff Goins. So I highly recommend that book, especially if you're artsy, fartsy, creative, with multifaceted interests. Because again, it was, it talked about how, the way we are is valuable, and we're all different, and that's important, and that matters. You don't have to be somebody you're not.
Well, imagine how boring it would be if we were all the same. And imagine how frustrating it is if you're trying to be someone else. And I've known a lot of people like that, and they were miserably unhappy. And when they finally just broke through and it's like, this is who I am, they were a lot more pleasant to be around.
And it goes back to that permission, giving themselves permission to be who they are. Yeah, we do that a lot in the coaching space, as well as unlocking that, where that's not in alignment, is how I'm behaving in alignment with who I really am, or am I trying to be somebody else due to fear or whatever else might be coming in.
So how can people get a hold of you? Where can they find you?
My main website is saradeacon.com, and that's a lot of information about me and my coaching. The other side of things is my martial arts N crafts. It's the letter N crafts.com. That's the martial arts and crafts side of things. And that is that website. You can link to the podcast through there. And yeah, I'm on Facebook, on Twitter, Sara Deacon, Sara Deacon Coach I'm not on Twitter. Why did I say Twitter? I meant Instagram. I don't do Twitter yet. Twitter confuses me. But I know a lot of people really like it. Sara Deacon Coach on Instagram and Facebook, and my martial arts and crafts, same handle on Instagram and Facebook as well.
And you're also on LinkedIn.
Yes.
Okay.
Sara Deacon.
Excellent. Sara, thank you so much for being on the show. And do you have any little final pearls of wisdom to drop on the audience before we sign off?
I guess the one I usually like to say is everything is a choice. You get to choose. Choose wisely.
Excellent. Well, thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Cheryl. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
It's always fun. And I think we could probably keep talking for the rest of the day, but
I'm sure.
We have things to do.
Yes.
And everybody, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. And just remember, when times get tough, you might want to evade, deflect, and redirect. You might want to take some martial arts classes, or at least just look into it. Do connect with Sara. As you can tell, she is a lovely person. She has a lot to offer and a lot to say. She also has an incredible website. It's actually very beautiful. And that is the way of the Femininja. And that's a wrap on another episode of the Femininja Project. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, be safe, be strong, and until next time, bye now.